Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be making a loaf of sandwich bread. I get a ton of questions about this when I show it in my videos or when I talk about it on Facebook groups or whatever. I started making my own bread, I guess a little over a year ago maybe, just because it's something I wanted to do. I love making bread. Like I would always make a loaf of bread when we had a bowl or a pot of soup or something like that. But I wanted to start making bread that we could use for everyday use, for toast in the morning or for sandwiches, whatever. So I looked around and looked around and looked around until I found the perfect recipe, and then I tweaked it. The recipe is from the YouTube channel, The Needy Homesteader. It is her Pullman pan sandwich bread. I tweaked it just a little bit. I put less sugar, less butter, less water, because that's what works for me. But pretty much else it's exactly, and I don't use instant yeast. I use active dry yeast. So mine is definitely a little bit different. I will link her video down below. So you can see hers if you'd like, and maybe compare the two, see what I do different. It is made in a specialty pan. It is made in what is called a Pullman bread pan. A Pullman pan has a lid on it, and that keeps it from over rising. It keeps its square shape, like the kind of sandwich bread you buy in the grocery store. And it also makes it a little denser, which I think makes for a nicer sandwich bread. And as long as you get 25 slices out of it, it's 2 points for one slice and 4 points for two slices on my personal points. And I'm guessing that'll be pretty much the same. That should be the same across the board because there's no 0 point foods in it, but things can be higher or lower depending on what you chose for your lifestyle habits. So I, of course, will have a link in the recipe. The recipe will be linked in the description box below. It'll take you to my website. And on the recipe in my website will be the link for the WW app. So if you are a United States WW member, you can just click on that. It will give you your personal points. If you are not, then you're going to have to put it into the recipe builder on your own with whatever app you use. I think that's everything. But you do need to cut it into 25 slices. Now I get that question a lot too. How do I cut my bread so evenly? So it's just practice. Honestly, I've been doing it for so long, and I really believe a good bread knife is a necessity. My bread knife is 30 years old. It's a Pampered Chef bread knife. I don't even know if they make them anymore, but it is fantastic. It does a great job. I also have a bread knife from my really, really nice knife set that also does a good job, but I just prefer the Pampered Chef one because it's a little bit lighter and I feel I have better control. My bread pan is 13 inches long, so I kind of can eyeball on that. I used to pull out a ruler. Doug still pulls out a ruler when he slices it up, but I just make them as even as I can. And I figure if one day one is a teeny bit thicker, the next day, one is a teeny bit skinnier, so it all evens out in the end. But you just take your time and you slice it, and it's fine. And I freeze mine because with just the two of us here, when the boys are here, we go through it a lot quicker. But when it's just Doug and I divide the loaf into two, wrap it in 2 layers of saran wrap, put it in a Ziploc bag, and put it right in the freezer. And it's perfect. And we mostly use it for toast, so it comes out great. Enough introduction. Let's get making some bread. Okay, what we need to make our sandwich bread is, I'm using my KitchenAid mixer fitted with the dough hook. And I am using a special bread pan called a Pullman pan. It has a lid. And what this does is the lid restricts the rising of the bread. So you get a nice square loaf, and it's almost crustless, kind of like a loaf of sandwich bread from the grocery store. I do have this linked in my Amazon store. You do not need to use this kind. You can use any kind of bread pan. This is the large 2-pound loaf one. They also make a 1-pound loaf. So that's the equipment we need. Then we need some sugar. some kosher salt, some flour, I just use all-purpose, some non-fat dry milk, yeast, and a tablespoon of butter, and 1 1/3 cup of warm water. Okay, we're gonna start with our water. 1 1/3 cups of water, and I have it at about 117 degrees. And to that, I am going to add a tablespoon of sugar. You can also substitute honey if you would rather. Do not substitute monk fruit though, it doesn't work well. And then we are going to put in a tablespoon of yeast. And we are just going to give this a stir. And then we are going to let it sit for 10 minutes to proof the yeast, which means it's just going to get nice and bubbly and active and alive. Now, if you are using an instant yeast, like the Saf brand, you can skip this step and you can add instant yeast right into your dry ingredients and things like that. I like to know my yeast is working, so this is the way I prefer to do it. So I am just gonna let that sit for 10 minutes while we get the dry ingredients ready. So what we are going to need in my bowl here, I'm going to do 4 cups of flour. Now I am just using all-purpose flour. You can also use bread flour, that comes out beautifully too. We're just going to use all-purpose today. And this is unbleached organic all-purpose flour. I would highly recommend unbleached. You don't have to use organic, but I would recommend unbleached. Okay, and to that, we're going to add a teaspoon of salt. Now, when I put my salt in, I kind of bury it down a little bit because you don't want the yeast and the salt to come in direct contact until it's mixed, because salt and yeast do not get along. Then we are going to add in 2 tablespoons of instant dry milk powder. And then 1 tablespoon of softened butter. This is not quite soft enough because I did just take it out, so I'm going to just soften it a little bit before I put it in. So I put my 1 tablespoon of butter in there. I accidentally melted it a little bit, but it'll be fine. I've got flour everywhere. And now we're just going to put this in our stand mixer. And we're just going to mix it for a minute or 2 just so everything combines before we add our yeast mixture. And as you can see over here, we are definitely getting active and bubbly. So I'm gonna let that go a couple more minutes, and I'm just gonna mix this on 2 for just a minute or so. Okay, as you can see, our yeast is very active and bubbly and alive. That is awesome. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the mixer back on to 2, and I'm gonna put our yeast mixture right in there. Now I'm going to turn it up to either 3 or 4 until it's all incorporated. Once all the flour and the liquid are incorporated, I'm going to let it knead for 5 minutes, but I don't want to start counting that until it's all incorporated. I'm just helping it along a little bit because I'm impatient. it'll start picking it up off the bottom and the sides, and it'll form a nice ball. Okay, you can see that it's all coming together now. Do not be tempted to add more water. It will come together. And now that it's all together, I'm going to turn it back down to about 2, and I'm going to let it knead for 5 minutes. Okay, our dough has been kneading for 5 minutes. So now we're just going to take it out of the bowl. It's beautiful. I'm just going to kind of gather it into a ball. And then I'm going to put it in my bowl. I have a little bit of olive oil in there. You could spray it. With spray, I just use like a 1/4 teaspoon of olive oil in the bowl. And turn the dough over and over until it's completely coated. And then we're going to cover it with a damp, warm cloth. You can also use plastic wrap. And then we're going to let it rise. Now, you can just put it in a nice warm place in your house. You can put it in your oven with the light on. I do not have like a proofing setting on my oven. So what I do is I do a little hack to make a proofing oven, and I'm going to show you that before we get this rising. So what I do is I put my oven on, 200 is the lowest setting it'll go, and I pretend I'm preheating it to 200 degrees. But what I'm really going to do is I'm just going to let it preheat for 1 minute. It may not even go up a degree, but it'll definitely be a little bit warmer. As soon as that 1 minute is up, I'm going to turn the oven off. I am not letting it get up to any type of temperature or anything. I'm just letting it preheat for 1 minute. I'm going to shut it off, and then I'm going to put our bread in, and I am going to let it rise probably about 1 hour and 15, 1 hour and 30 minutes. I'm going to keep an eye on it, and as soon as it is doubled in size and a nice rounded ball, I'm going to take it out. You can actually overproof dough. You don't want to overproof it, because if you do, it's going to sink. It's not going to rise well. It's not going to bake well. So make sure you keep an eye on it, like 1 hour and 15, hour and a half. And that also depends on your oven or where you are rising your dough, because if it's a really hot environment, it'll rise faster. So let's put this in, and we'll come back and check on it in about 1 hour and 15 minutes. Okay, there is our beautiful bread dough. So we are just going to punch it down, turn it out onto the counter. I have a little bit of flour out here just so it doesn't stick. We're going to shape it, put it in our pan for the second rise. Okay, so we're just going to punch it down, deflate the dough, and then turn it out onto the counter. And then start shaping it. I'm just going to use my fingers. I have my pan here just so I kind of know how long to make it. You want to keep it in a rectangle shape as best you can. And you don't want any bubbles in there. So if you have any bubbles, get rid of those. Okay. That looks about good. If forgot my bench scraper, so I'm going to grab my bench scraper in case I need a little bit of help rolling it up. Okay, we have it all shaped out. It's about 1/4 inch thick, and then we're just going to start rolling it up. And you want to roll it and pull it because you want it as tight as possible. Then we're gonna pinch it. And then on the ends, we're just gonna tuck the ends in and bring them together. And just kind of shape it up a little bit. Quite sure why that's not real smooth there, but we're gonna go with it. Might not be the prettiest loaf of bread, but it'll taste good. Then we are just gonna pop it into our pan, and I'm gonna make sure I tuck the ends under a little bit, and then I'm just gonna use my hand and press it down. I just want it to fill the pan so it has that really nice square rectangle shape of beautiful slices of bread. And at this point, oh, by the way, I did, with these kind of pans, this is a USA pan. You do not spray them. They are naturally non-stick. You should never ever use spray on things that are naturally non-stick, like on the on non-stick pans and stuff. You should never use spray. It makes it gummy. But you can use oil. I took probably about 1/4 teaspoon of olive oil and a pastry brush and just brushed the inside of the pan, the bottom and the sides, and also just a little bit on the lid so it wouldn't stick on top. Just really taking my time to make sure it's nice and even and a nice shape. So that looks good. So now I am going to put this back over near the oven, in the oven somewhere, and let it rise again for about 45 minutes. I want it to come pretty much all the way up here to the top. So I'm gonna check it in 45 minutes. And if your oven takes a while to preheat, you can start preheating your oven to 375. You can put this on top and it'll rise nicely while you're preheating your oven. Okay, here's a little peek after the second rise. It rose all the way to the top. And now we are just gonna put it in the oven at 375 and bake it for anywhere from like 30 to 35 minutes. I'll just, peek at it and make sure it's getting a nice golden brown. Okay, there is our bread out of the oven. It did not come up quite as high as it normally does. I'm not really sure why. Could have been the cold temperatures. Maybe I should have let it rise a little more. Not sure. But now I'm just going to turn it out of the pan and show you the next step. Okay, while the bread's hot, I just take a stick of butter and just very quickly go right over, the top, the bottom, and the sides. You are not really using, probably not even 1/4 teaspoon of butter. This just keeps it soft. Just real quickly. Sorry, trying to do this one-handed, because we are outside shoveling snow during all this. And that's it. there we go. There is our sandwich bread. I am going to let it cool completely before we slice it. Okay, friends, as I was editing this video, I realized that I pushed record on the part where I was trying to fix my tripod, and I turned the camera off on the part where I was slicing the darn bread. It was quite the afternoon here today. We were dealing with 6 inches of snow. We were dealing with a sick chicken and just a couple other things going on in the midst of filming that. So I'm really not surprised that something happened. So slicing the bread. I use my 30-year-old Pampered Chef bread knife. That thing is gold to me. You need a serrated knife, some kind of knife with large serrated blade, a large serrated blade, and I use a ruler. So what I do is I cut a really thin slice off the one end. That's kind of like the heel of the bread. Then I use a ruler. It's usually at 12 inches is the loaf. So I cut each slice a little less than a half an inch. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm really, really close because I've been doing it forever. I don't even use a ruler anymore. I use it for the first slice and then I can just kind of judge. I cut it into 24 slices, and that very other end where the heel is, I cut a thin slice off of that. Those 2 thin slices equal the 25th slice. So I actually have 24 usable slices, but 25 slices to make it 2 points, if that makes any sense. Probably not, because it's late while I'm editing this. I am so upset with myself for messing up the slicing of the bread part, because I know how important that is. The next time I make a loaf of bread, whether it be on a daily vlog or whatever, I will make sure I slice it on camera for you. But it's really, really not hard. As long as you have a good serrated knife with nice big serrates. I know that's not the right way to say it, but you know, it is what it is. So and like I said, measure your bread and then divide by 25. Not hard at all, I promise. Okay, back to wrapping up the bread. Okay, so here is our bread sliced up. In the beginning, when I cut off the 2 ends, leave one end on because it makes it easier to slice when you get to those last slices. See, this one did get a little bit wonky. And also, what I do, I forgot to mention this, those 2 ends I cut off, I count that as 1 slice. So that is slice 25 or slice 1. So then I do 24 slices. So this is 24 slices. And like I said, the one I cut off, the 2 ends, 2 thin pieces make 1 regular piece, and that's the 25th slice. So hope that makes sense. So now I'm just going to wrap these in saran wrap. Put them side by side in a Ziploc bag and throw them in the freezer. So my friends, that is it. That is how I make my sandwich bread in a Pullman pan. Like I said, you do not have to use that pan. You can use just a regular loaf pan. I would probably use 2 loaf pans because it's a big, you see, it's a big loaf of bread. I just like that pan because I just love square slices of bread. That's how I like my sandwiches. And usually if it'll rise all the way to the top, it is completely square. It is awesome. Like I said, this just didn't rise quite enough. Maybe I didn't let it go long enough. I'm not sure, but it will be perfect. It will be delicious, and we will enjoy it with sandwiches, as toast, whatever. I will have the recipe linked in the description box below. It'll take you to my website. That's where the recipe will be. Probably easier to watch the video and read the recipe at the same time. I mean, that's how I am. I'm a visual learner. And also, I will have a link to the Pullman pan that I use. I will link that separately. It's in my Amazon store, but I'll also link it separately. And when you go through my Amazon store for anything, you don't pay more or anything like that. You pay the same thing you would if you didn't go through my link. Amazon just knows you're shopping through me and gives me like a 2-cent kickback. So there you have it, friends. That is the sandwich bread in a Pullman pan. I hope you enjoyed this. I know a lot of you were asking for it. It's not, you know, quote WW, but it's 2 points for a slice of bread. I think that's fabulous. And, you know, it's just a few ingredients. You know what's in there. You made it with your own hands. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you so very much for watching and spending a little bit of time with me today. Taking that time out of your busy day means the world to me. So I will see you all in my next video, which will either be a weekend vlog or it'll be quick and easy dinner/sandwich rolls, whatever I get done first. Take it easy, guys.